What's the biggest mistake you've watched someone make in their personal life? There is a couple my husband and I used to know before we had kids. They were decent people and we hung out for a period of time, but then fell out of touch. I guess in the past decade they got hooked on heroin, had 2 kids, had those kids taken away by the CPS and now one of them is in prison. It really went to shit for them and there is really no one else to blame. Bad choices. Must be my disabled brother who fell for an internet scam. He met a woman online, she lived in a different continent but he was certain she was the love of his life. Spent over a year chatting and emailing her, and helping her with money from time to time. Very fishy stuff, but he refused to listen to my skepticism. It ended when he had saved up enough money to go visit her. He went, came back 2 days later and refused to ever admit what had happened. Went to his grave without ever talking about it. Second place goes to my father who cheered him on. He wasn't sure whether it was a scam or not, but he thought it was nice that my brother had hopes and dreams. My sister owned a home with her husband and first child. Her father-in-law convinced them that if they sold their house and became live-in caretakers for some old relative of his that he would leave his supposedly nice house in Austin to them. They'd get to live rent-free at this house, it would be theirs outright when he dies, and they'd be set. So they sell their house, move to Austin where they don't have jobs and move in with this guy. And it's absolute chaos. Guy is constantly watching porn on the living room TV with their toddler around, doing inappropriate old guy stuff, telling them what they can and cannot do in the house and when they can come and go. It's a freaking nightmare. They end up leaving the house, and getting their own place. They also eventually moved to another state for a few years and came back. They've never been able to buy another house since housing prices have gone way up and they didn't have enough equity on their other house that they sold, so they've been bouncing from shitty apartment to shitty apartment ever since. My friend chose to have a child with a man who had cheated on her multiple times, while still in high school. Single mother of 3 living in poverty. Gave her parents her $6,000 tax refund to hold on to because she didn't want her abusive ex to convince her to split it with him. Parents spent it all in weeks. My uncle got himself a mistress. Lent her $10,000 he never got back and lost his job defending her at work. Wife served him divorce papers short afterwards. He gave up his house to his wife. So he ended up jobless and homeless, sleeping on our couch at the ripe age of 60. Have a child with someone who fights them on their parenting style. Also cheated on my friend who was 8 months pregnant. They just got married too. One of my best friends walked out on his wife and 2 kids because a girl at the gym and him were having a relationship. As it actually turned out, she was just being friendly and chatting to him. No relationship, no mutual decision to be together, nothing. He misunderstood polite friendliness for flirting, and destroyed his own family for it. Friend worked hard to gain the credentials to advance his career to his goals. It took 4 months for him to get busted having an affair with a subordinate and he lost all he worked for and ended up losing his license. A buddy that lived with me for a while got a car he couldn't afford because he was obsessed with image. Stopped making payments, tried to part out the car and report as stolen since he had the bright idea that would bring more money than just giving it back to the bank. Then got into check fraud, which landed him in jail. Been in and out of the system ever since, from stories I hear. Have kids under the hope they'll fix their marriage. Children are not accessories. This girl who rented out my parents' basement was not great at making smart life choices. She married someone who is serving life in prison for murder. She met him through her cousin who was also in prison. She eventually got a huge chest tattoo of his last name, and more tattoos of his name all over her body. He ended up being transferred to the east coast of Canada. She lived in the west coast and she up and abandoned her 2 kids to be close to her husband. One of her kids is severely handicapped, but she never gave a shit about being a parent to her. Anyways, about 3 months after moving she posts all over her socials that they broke up, and she quickly tried getting the chest tattoo covered up. 2 weeks later she announced they worked it out and they were together again. They kept doing this pattern of fight, break up, make up and repeat. Again. She had 2 daughters she up and abandoned for a man who will most likely never get out of prison. A guy in his mid-50s always worked under the table. Never filed a tax return. Didn't understand that he wouldn't qualify for Social Security. When I showed him the requirements on the website, I thought he was going to cry. My high school philosophy teacher cheated on his wife with my classmate. His daughter was in the year below us. She transferred schools out of embarrassment when her dad finally left the family to pursue a relationship with the 18-year-old. Yuck. Let go of a girl close to their wedding because of his idea of what a wife should be like. Lives in deep regret now as she married his friend. They're really happy whilst he has never found anyone else. My friend failed psych evils to join the army. Once he got around that exception he was kicked out within a year. He robbed the corner store less than a mile from his house. He was in full SWAT gear with a tactical mask. Everyone knew exactly who it was. There were 8 calls to Crime Stoppers identifying him. He was arrested within 3 hours of the crime with the still loaded pistol in his car. If he had used a fake gun, or an unloaded pistol, he would have gotten 1-2 or 1-4 the prison sentence. He went from being in the army to prison in less than a month. My brother ran for public office without having an agenda. He had no leadership qualifications, background and position, or support from anyone in the community. His took out a $10K personal loan to finance his political run and held one fundraiser where most of the attendees were family and couldn't vote for him. He lost badly, coming in last behind 4 other candidates. It took him years to pay back the loan and refill his savings, which he completely drained to pay for signage and flyers. Saddest of all, the printer misspelled his name on both items, so any remnant is a harsh reminder of how badly things went. One of my students was offered a 95 scholarship to Juilliard. They turned it down because they felt a 95 scholarship was a slap to the face, and instead decided not to go to school. Last I heard they weren't playing, and were working minimum wage, but talking about how good they used to be. My parents getting remarried to different partners when they have yet to figure their own shit out. They still haven't settled on custody of my younger siblings after going on 7 years now, and my father's wife just moved out. My brother was getting scouted by Northeastern colleges to play football after playing remarkably well in high school. He dropped out of high school 6 months before he graduated. Waste their entire inheritance on drugs. Dump all of their savings, $30,000 or so, into random crypto at the height of the market. They were trying to get more money to put towards a house but lost a majority of it when things crashed. When their significant other found out, they left. Have another kid. After number 13. When my grandmother died, my grandfather has about $15,000 left over to live off of until he could no longer afford his house. My cousin heard that Grandpa had money, so he would ask Grandpa for gas money all the time, then go and blow it on drugs. Over the course of 1 year, he convinced Grandpa to give him $12,000 of the $15,000 that Grandpa had left. Once Grandpa realized what was going on, he stopped giving my cousin money, and because he could no longer pay his dealers, he got beat half to death and then dumped on the side of the road. If someone hadn't found him in time, he might not be here anymore. Going drunk on a floatable boat in the middle of the lake when you don't know how to swim, poor guy drowned. Edit inflatable. It was my now brother-in-law's younger brother. I luckily wasn't there that trip. I just heard what happened. I can't imagine the trauma my bro-in-law has now. I'm actually glad I wasn't there because that would have fucked me up good. They had to pull out his body themselves, being passive and just letting everything happen to him. He wasn't sure if he wanted kids or not, but his girlfriend did. So they had sex without condoms. She got pregnant, with twins. He looks absolutely miserable. Similar things happened to him involving housing. His family convinced him to put the parents' mortgage in his name. Things got messy. X200B. Don't just let things happen to you. Proposed to his girlfriend after she had cheated on him. 2 months before their wedding she left him and immediately got pregnant by a random dude. Just watched my cousin move out for the 5th time with no plan, nowhere to go. Hanging out with manipulative people because they want her disability check. Cussed grandmother out when she tried to help and figure out what's going on. Got kicked out of one of the hardest community center to get placed in, so now she definitely doesn't have a home and has been sleeping in one of the most dangerous parks in town because drug addicts go there at night. Gonna try to talk to her tonight, but honestly I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do. This has been continuous for months. My friend injecting his first dose. She was 14. He was 37.
I hope you all are doing well, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to like if you enjoyed this video. If you have something to say critically or otherwise, leave a comment. And if you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe to see more of it. I hope you all have wonderful and